First thing to do is install the backplate for our CPU cooler. So because we've got an Intel motherboard, we're going to need to install our backplate, and this backplate is compatible with both LGA 1200 and LGA 1700 motherboards. We've got an LGA 1700 motherboard. If you've got an LGA 1200 motherboard, you're going to want to have all these pins toward the middle setting, but for LGA 1700 like we have, we're going to want to pull them all towards the outer setting. And then if we go ahead and turn our bracket over, with the pins all in the outer setting, it should fit through the holes in the back of the motherboard. Next thing to do is screw one of these spacers onto each corner. And again, which of these you use depends on which Intel motherboard you have. If you've got an LGA 1200 socket, you're going to want to use the silver spacer. And if you've got an LGA 1700 socket like we do, it's the darker black spacers that you're going to want to use. Just a word of caution, don't mix the Intel spacers up with the AMD ones. The Intel ones have these lines the whole way round and they're rounded, whereas we've got these flat sides on the AMD ones. If you've got an AMD motherboard, the first thing you're going to do is remove these two clips. They're each held on with two screws. And then you're going to want to use the AMD spacers. Again, these are the ones that have the flat sides on them. And again, these come in two different colors depending on the type of motherboard that you have. You're going to use the silver ones with an AM4 motherboard and the darker black ones with an AM5 motherboard. If you've got an AM5 motherboard, the backplate is going to be fixed to the motherboard. You're not going to be able to remove it. If you've got an AM4 motherboard, the backplate will be free to come out once you've taken the stock clips off. But what you want to do is leave your backplate in place, and either motherboard you're going to do the same thing. Just use the corresponding spacers and screw them into place in each corner. And it's the end of the spacer with the bigger threads that you're going to screw into the motherboard. We're now ready to start working on our AIO, and the first thing for us to do is join our fans together. If I turn them around to the side, you see there's little connectors on the side, so they are going to daisy chain together. So it's just a simple matter of lining the fans up and pushing down to lock them into place. And that's all three of our fans joined together. On the end of our fans, we get this connector here, and we just take this cable, we're going to line it up and then push down to lock it into place. Coming from the connector, we've got two different cables. We've got a 4-pin PWM connector, which we're going to plug into our CPU fan header, and that's going to allow us to power the fans and also control their speed. And we've also got a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB cable, which is going to go into an ARGB header on our motherboard, allowing us to adjust the lighting on the fans. In the box with the I/O, we get this 2-to-1 ARGB cable. So what we can do is take one of the connectors off, and then we can take our ARGB cable coming from the fans and plug it into the cable. And that's going to leave us a spare connector, which we're going to need when we come on to our pump. So coming from our pump, we've got two cables. We've got a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB cable, and if we daisy chain this into the cable coming from our fans, it's going to allow us to control the lighting effects on the pump. The other cable is a 4-pin PWM connector, and if we plug this into our motherboard's pump header, it's going to allow us to control the speed of the pump. So next thing for us to do is to put the bracket onto your pump, which is going to allow us to secure it to the motherboard. And in the box, you get two different brackets. We've got an AMD bracket here and an Intel bracket here. Which the brackets you have, the process for attaching is exactly the same. So if I can take our AMD bracket here, we can simply line it up and give it a little push, and it's going to clip into place. So I'm going to be showing you how to install the Intel bracket. It's just a matter of lining it up with a little slot on the side, and then we give it a little bit of a push, and it's going to clip into place. So next we can set our fans onto the radiator, and we can secure the fans into place using the long radiator screws that came with the AIO. Then we can set our AIO into place at the top of the case, and we can secure it into place at the top using the short radiator screws. Now our AIO does come with these little washers which you could put in between the screw and the case. The reason I haven't is the type of dust filter that we have at the top. If we were to raise these screws up higher, it might interfere with the dust filter coming down. Next, I'm just going to pass the cables coming from the radiator through the cutout at the back. Next, we can add some thermal paste to the center of the CPU. Remember, before installing our AIO, it is important we remove the plastic protection. And in terms of the cables coming from the AIO, I just like to wrap them up around the pump bracket, making sure they're not on the cold plate. And then we just need to line the pump up with the bracket on the motherboard. And we're then going to want to get a thumb screw onto each corner. And then we're just going to want to tighten each corner up in turn. Up at the top of the case, we've got our CPU fan header and our CPU opt header just to the left. So I'm just going to plug the cable coming from the pump into the CPU opt header. I'm going to pass our ARGB cable up and through to the back and just tidy up the excess cable coming from our pump cable. Our CPU fan header is this one here, so I'm going to bring the cable coming from the fans and the radiators back through. We'll line the cable up with the header and push into place and then just pull the excess cable through to the back. Next to that, we've got an ARGB header, so we'll bring the double splitter cable back through and get it plugged into here. If the logo on your pump isn't sitting the right way round, it is rotatable. It's just a matter of rotating it round and getting it into the exact position you want it to be in. We just need to get the RGB cable from our pump plugged in, so we can remove the plastic protection from the double splitter cable, line the two cables up and push into place.